Hello, and welcome to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crow Hill. Good evening, Crow Hill.
Good evening, Pigweed.
What's on your mind?
Well, I just came back from a conference where four professional white women lectured us on diversity, which seemed a little odd to me.
No, not really.
And that led me to get this book by Heather McDonald called The Diversity Delusion.
Wow, okay.
And I thought, just kind of diversity was on my mind, So
right.
that's what I'm thinking about. But, before I can really get into that, I think we ought to drink a beer.
I think we should do. It's a great idea. And what do we have?
So this is the Anchor Christmas beer, which means I have no idea what it is, because every year it's different. And they've been doing this since, what is it, 1975?
1975,
Yeah.
when beer was so boring.
Yes.
Really, 1975 might be the worst year in the history of American beer.
Yeah, what was there to get
I mean,
in
it's like,
1975?
everything was being gobbled up
Right.
by Bud Miller Coors.
Yeah.
There's nothing interesting going on. If you wanted an interesting beer around that time, we all drank German beers.
Yeah,
Right?
right, yeah. Or
It was at a real low point.
what was the French beer that Lowenbrow?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was like sort of interesting,
Okay. You ready?
Yeah. So we got this.
Well,
I think what holds it together, I think
That's
the
good.
one consistent thing from year to year is it's usually on the dark side.
Yeah.
And it's usually spicy.
yeah, it does have spice. I'm surprised that they've been brewing since 1975. However, they have not, have they? That's the interesting thing. The recipe changes
The
every
recipe
year.
changes every year, and the label changes every year.
And the label changes every year.
So just every year, they've done a Christmas beer, and what is it? What is
Well,
it this time?
That's interesting.
And-
It's good, but let's mention one more thing. Let's get back to our list that we've been working on diligently for about a year.
Yeah.
The 25 most important American craft beers ever brewed.
Not the best craft beers ever brewed.
No, they're not necessarily. And we've got a lot of just can't find or out of commission.
Right.
But this is on there at number 17.
Anchor
And
Christmas Ale.
well, why is it on there?
Right. So especially since it's been a different beer every year.
Yeah.
So
Which I guess is the thing.
that is the thing. Making it a different beer every year makes it collectible. Oh, here's the 1982 vintage of Anchor Christmas Ale. Maybe also they just kind of reintroduce us to the concept of a Christmas beer.
Yes, I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, because I think, Coors didn't make something special at Christmas. And
Right,
Budweiser
you've got
didn't
some
make
like
something-
Bach seasonal type beers that are seasonal, but not dedicated to the holidays.
Mhm.
So I think that's why it's important, and lots of people do.
Right. And Anchor's a
The
great
beginning of it.
brewery, so if
They're
Anchor
the
comes
only
up with-
they're the only one with 4 beers in the top 25. I
Right.
mean, that's saying something.
That's saying something. And if Anchor comes out with something special, I'm going to try it. For heaven's sakes, it's Anchor. You want to try something. Big.
Wow, that is a diverse list. Boy, oh boy, is that what makes it great? Is the
Yes,
the
it must
level
be.
of
It
the
must,
diversity?
It must be the well, although there's no wine on the list. So is it really diverse?
Yeah, right.
Is it a diverse list? There's no root beer on the list.
Right.
So I guess it's diversity depends on kind of what you mean.
Well, yes. You mean because because I think what we're about to discover is it's not about the diversity of the content; it's the diversity of how it looks.
Right. If they're all in different colored
as long
bottles.
as we have different colored beers, I
Right.
think we're
That's
covering
right. Yeah.
diversity.
That's
So, Tucker Carlson got into a little bit of heat
What a
for
surprise, yeah.
quoting for these four nasty quotes.
Right.
Yeah. So our diversity, our patchwork heritage, is not a weakness. It is still and always be one of our greatest strengths. Barack Obama. Our diversity is one of our greatest strengths. Well, that's a different version, isn't there, Bernie Sanders?
Bernie
And here's one. Here's Joe Biden. He's going to put a new twist on it.
Yeah.
Our great strength lies in our diversity. And here we come, the ever-quotable Hillary Clinton. We know our diversity is our strength, not a weakness. Okay, so these probably all came within 3 weeks of each other.
Right, because they all are reading from the same hymn book, right?
Exactly. Like somebody said it and it sounded, once Barack Obama said it, it sounded really good.
The talking points get faxed around to the different offices,
And
right?
so Tucker Carlson puts them on the screen and says,
Says, yeah, so who's this?
what's the big deal?
Right.
So after that, everybody writes about Tucker Carlson's racist rant.
And I'll bet you he didn't even mention race. I didn't see the segment, but I'll bet you he didn't even mention race. He was just saying, what's the big deal with diversity?
He's just talking about the lack of importance.
Right.
He says diversity is not a value.
Right.
It's just a description. It's like something, if you take any group of people or team or location or endeavor or whatever, it's diversity in and of itself does not make it better or worse or anything. It's just... It is what it is.
Let's say you have a relay team, 4 runners, right? Do you care that they're diverse or do you care that they're fast?
You don't want a diversity of speed.
No, you don't want a diversity. There's a lot of things you don't want diversity of, but the one thing you want is speed.
Yeah.
And that's what you care about. Maybe the ability to hand off the baton, or whatever. But diversity really isn't a value in that situation. What you want is fast people. And, probably what you want is 4 Kenyans. Because, because they tend to be fast.
It's very not diverse.
They're very not diverse. I mean, if you look at the long distance runners in the Olympics, who's going to win?
Yeah.
It's not the Poles.
No, it's not. It's not the Poles. So, all right, before we dig into this completely, the origin of this. So like I said, this is very recent.
Right.
And these quotes all popped up all at once.
I don't remember people talking about diversity 5 years ago. It just
and Tucker Carlson's point was that you don't get praise or criticism for your immutable traits.
Right.
Right. What you
You're
look
not supposed
like,
to.
your height, like your DNA.
Yeah.
You don't get to get credit for your DNA, or you should be criticized for your DNA. That's called racism. Right. And by saying that that's bad, makes him a racist somehow.
It's back. Everything's back to front and.
So trying to figure out. So how did this all spark up all at once? Well, it did come during the Trump campaign.
Oh, these quotes? Is that where they came from? Yeah. So
because it's recent.
Diversity seems like a useful cudgel for several different circumstances. It's useful for if somebody's against illegal immigration. You can say, oh, what you're really against is diversity. And diversity is our strength, la, la, la. It's also useful for the trans thing. Like, if you want to say, oh, you want to have women going to men's bathrooms and vice versa and all this kind of stuff. Oh, your problem is you're against diversity. Well, actually my problem is I want modesty. But, so...
And when so if you say, for 10 years, the number one concern for voters is illegal immigration. And so you have a president that says, my number one goal is to address the border.
So we need to find a way to smack him over the head.
Exactly. Yeah. So as he's gaining momentum, how can we undercut this?
Yeah.
Well, what we'll do is we'll say being concerned about the border means that you hate immigrants, which means you hate people of color, which means you hate, which means you're a racist. So,
and there is something fiendishly clever about it.
It's just they're masters of it.
Yeah, and the thing that I find fiendishly clever about it is very true that America is a nation of immigrants and is built from a very diverse group of people. Yeah. And people will say we're a melting pot and all that. So the idea of saying diversity is the strength has a kind of a baseball apple pie Chevrolet
yes,
kind of appeal to it.
It has some historical merit. It has people think that our foreign policy, our immigration policy, is written on the Statue of Liberty, but it isn't. But you can appeal to that.
Yes, because it has a very American sound to it. Although in a way, it's really the opposite of because what's our motto? Out of many, one.
Yes.
But this whole diversity thing is not out of many, one. It's out of many, many more.
Yes, you're right. And even people have decided, well, it's more like a salad than a melting pot.
Right, it's not a melting pot.
No, right. It's a bunch of different things all in the same bowl.
Or not even in the same bowl. It's more like when you go to the buffet. You've got
the buffet is better.
All the different things all over the place, and they're not in the same bucket. So here's this and here's that. So what the diversity people want to do is pretend that diversity itself, just on its own, is a virtue and a value. And it's like an American virtue and a value. And if you're against diversity, you're against some American value.
And you're quickly a racist.
Yeah. But what does that diversity actually even mean?
There are two ways that I see you can look at this. Like diversity, if diversity is our greatest strength, that means strength is better than weakness, right?
Yeah.
Well, Hillary said so herself.
Yeah.
It's a strength, not a weakness.
Right.
So it must make things stronger. It must make things better. So diversity will always make things better. Or does it mean diversity is so important, it's such an important goal or value that even if it makes things worse, you have to do it anyway because,
right. It's going to have to become
like
the second
busing.
one. Yeah, it's going to have to become the second one because the first one's measurable, right?
Yeah.
The first one is actually subject to empirical validation because you could take some team that's not diverse and you could impose diversity on it and see if it's better. And then you could find out, well, it's not, right. or it is, whatever.
Right. When the Germans beat up everybody in Europe with a very non-diverse army.
Right. So the first one, you're right. I think that's a way to view it is that diversity is always going to make something better. But I think that's so transparently not true.
Okay, well, let's move on.
Okay. But the second one, that diversity is a value independent of whether it's good or bad. Like, for example, saying that the accused has a right to counsel. Okay, that is a value.
Yeah, that's a value.
That is an important value, whether or not it results in more convictions or more, so right. That's something that we value for its own sake.
We may end up letting a guilty man go.
But we value this idea of cross-examination, facing your accuser, having the accused having his fair day in court.
It's more important to honor that than care about the results.
Yes. So, because that is a value. That is something we absolutely value in Western society.
Right. But, so in a very specific way.
Yeah.
But not in all ways do we say it's okay that we don't care about the result because if I'm getting ready to go into surgery, I care about the result a lot more than I care about the diversity of the surgical team.
Absolutely. If I walk in, and I unfortunately had a couple surgeries relatively recently, if I walk in and all the nurses are women, I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to say, doggone it, I want a male nurse in here.
If I'm held hostage and there's a SWAT team to come rescue me,
right.
Not that concerned about the diversity of the team.
No, I really don't care what they look like. I care how beefy they are and how well they can shoot.
Yes. So in most cases, you do care about the outcome. I mean, if you have a business, if you have a town that has a future, then you expect a certain... You want the town to improve, and you get there by having actually common goals and common values and agreeing on what constitutes a better town and the ways to get there.
Right.
So, but according to these people, the best way to get there is to make sure that you have people of different languages, races, values, religions. That's how you reach a common purpose.
Yeah, and it exposes the whole silliness of diversity because when people talk about diversity, they're not talking about viewpoint diversity. They're not talking about diversity in all these other different areas. Like, for example, heard somebody ask Jordan Peterson the other day about whether diversity helps in employment situations. And he was saying, if you look at what it is that predicts success and what it is why people get discriminated in employment and that sort of stuff. You have, like, good-looking people generally get better salaries than ugly people, right? Okay, so do we have this idea tall people get better salaries than shorter people? True. So why don't we have diversity in height? Why don't we have diversity in attractiveness? Why don't we have diversity in any number of other things? No, they always come back to, sex, sexual orientation or proclivity or whatever, right. And race. And come on, that's not diversity. That's just you're using diversity as a pretend tool for these specific goals.
So, but what is the goal? And what do you suppose? What are you trying to match? Does every environment that you can think of, workplace to whatever, have to represent what? The entire nation? Which is what, 75% white and 12 and
Right.
What about what if you're in an all black neighborhood
Right.
and an all black restaurant?
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm going to go in there and say, sorry,
and
you don't have
complain
enough
that
white.
there
aren't enough white waiters here.
Does anybody complain that or that in a Mexican restaurant, everybody that works there is Mexican?
Yeah.
Does anybody?
Or
I
a
love
Chinese
that.
restaurant. Yeah, that's why you go there.
It really
Right.
is.
If I go into a Chinese restaurant and I see like, a black guy, 3 white guys, 2 Hispanic guys, and I'm
You're like,
this isn't a Chinese restaurant.
No. So what does that mean then? So what is this goal of when are you going to achieve this goal of properly diverse everything?
Some people
Or is it just like you said, a cudgel to use when it's convenient?
I think, well, that's absolutely what it is. But if you think about it, if you were to try to put the absolute positive best face on diversity, then what they would say is, if the country is 10% black and 10% Hispanic and 30% this, and
Right.
then in every way,
In every way.
town, in every profession, in every job, in every industry, in
That's
every
what I'm saying,
everything.
right? So what if you're in a portion of the country you're in Montana? It's all white.
Right.
I mean, we have to import people, like I
Yeah.
said, and then Harlem now is responsible for making sure you get enough uptown whites to come work
Exactly.
there.
Yeah, and then
So is it, or can it be regional, or can it be your? No, it's whenever. It's basically whenever you think there's too many white people. That's what it is.
The
Like,
concept makes no sense when you try to think of it from a broad perspective. So the only thing it can possibly be is a cudgel to beat people with. That's the only thing it can possibly be. Because if you want to try, let's say blacks in law firms. Okay, let's say that you want to have equal representation of blacks in law firms. All right. Now, first you have to ask the question, why? But let's just say that that's the goal. So, what if you're in your pool of applicants coming into your law firm, you've got 100 white guys and 2 black guys, all right? And you have to have 10% of your workforce be black because that would make equal representation.
Right.
So those 2 black guys get, disproportionately raised up,
Yeah.
independent of whether they're competent, how well they did on their tests, anything else.
That's
just ridiculous.
Yes, especially if I am being represented by one of these lawyers.
Well, that's the nasty side of it. The nasty side of it is if you go into a law firm and they say, okay, this guy's going to represent you, and you think, are you here because of merit?
Yes.
Or are you here to fill a quota? And that's the nasty side of diversity that
So
a lot of people don't want to
there's
think about.
built-in doubt.
Yes.
Because
Built-in
of the
doubt ahead
system.
of time. Right.
If you knew everything is merit-based,
Right.
you wouldn't have those doubts. If it's people bowing to the diversity god,
Right.
then you don't know.
You don't know if they're there because they're actually competent and can do their job, or if they're there
And
to,
the law firm's like,
to
well,
fulfill a check mark on a diversity quotient.
right. Or yeah, I mean, even if I was a black guy, I'd be like, okay, they probably given me the black lawyer.
Right.
But am I getting the best representation?
Am
Am
I?
I only getting that?
And why? The problem is I don't want to have that question.
I
If
know.
if I go into the doctor and he's Asian or he's black or he's whatever the heck it is, I want to know he's there because he passed law school. He's a good doctor. He's a professional. I can trust him. That's what I want to know.
It's right. Sometimes
wanna-
they do learn to be doctors in law school.
Yeah. I don't.
I know what you mean.
Did I say? Well, I did. Okay, sorry. So I don't want to have the doubt that because this person is in a minority group, maybe they were put in that position because they needed. Now let's flip it around. Let's take a female-dominated profession. Like for example, apparently right now, the social sciences and especially psychology, women dominate the social sciences.
Totally.
So you have it's like 75-25. Now, if I go in and there's a male psychologist, am I going to think, are you a quota?
Right.
Are you here because they had to make sure they had more men? For some reason, of course, diversity never works that way. It only seems to work in one direction.
Right.
But anyway, just the concept. If all of a sudden I say...
Well, okay, so go ahead. I've got something.
or nurses. What if I go in and there's a male nurse? Am I going to think, are you here because you're a competent nurse? Or are you here because they felt they had to have more men as nurses?
All right, so how about this? So in some ways, let's just say you have an ad agency.
Mhm.
You might say, wow, I need as many perspectives as possible
Sure.
looking at this. So what I'm saying is diversity is kind of neutral. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it probably makes things worse. Sometimes it could make things better.
Yes.
My sister-in-law, who is black, just started working in psychology field.
Okay.
You know
Yeah.
that? And she is getting pounded with cases because the people, when they get to choose, who they go see,
Right.
and she's the only black woman
Oh.
there.
Okay.
So you might, as a firm, you go, I need a very competent black woman because I'm trying to.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's what the public or the consumer.
Yeah. So if I'm in publishing, you're in printing. If I'm trying to do a publication for a market that I'm not familiar with, let's say I'm trying to do a publication for Hispanics, and we don't really have a lot of Hispanics in the company I work for.
Right.
So we very well might want to bring in some Hispanics
All right.
to help us understand how should we reach this
Right,
audience.
right.
Now, so in those cases,
So
diversity is absolutely a strength. That's something where
Where you
I
choose
need other
specific-
ideas.
but not this worldwide
Right. Imposing this weird idea that there should be equal representation everywhere in every possible way. It's just
So I have a friend who would probably agree with this.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
whole diversity is our strength.
right.
And he lives in a neighborhood where everybody else would agree. So it's a all white,
Okay.
middle class, college educated, liberal neighborhood.
Okay. Right. There's a lot of diversity there.
Yeah, a lot of diversity. but if you ask them about it,
Yeah.
well, they love diversity.
Sure, they
and
love
they have
diversity.
this fabulous summer alley party.
Yeah.
People bring stuff, and they have a great Christmas or it's not Christmas. It's a New Year's gathering.
Right.
Because it's a very cohesive neighborhood.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm saying it's because it's not diverse.
Yes.
So I'd like to put it back on them. Those, you guys with your Birkenstocks, tie dyes, and feel the burn shirts.
Right. Yeah.
You know what would really make this neighborhood great is if 25% of you moved out,
Right.
and could replace you with some El Salvadoran migrants,
Right.
some Somalis, some Syrian refugees,
Right.
and some Cambodians.
Yeah.
And that would, by definition,
Make it better.
make this better.
Yeah.
That party's going to be better. How about that Christmas party?
Yeah. How if we bring in some people who use a different calendar so that New Year's is on a different date?
Right.
So how are you going to have a different New Year's celebration if these guys have New Year's on one day? Or how about economic diversity? Let's bring some poor people in there.
Well, I think yes. Part of that would have to be some Section 8 housing,
Right. Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Some homeless people.
some blue collar Trump supporters.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because
If you're going to look at the diversity of the neighborhood and you find out that 97% of them voted for Hillary Clinton, no,
Yeah.
that's not diverse.
No, it's not.
So we need to bring in some Trump supporters.
But nobody's talking about
Nobody
that.
talks about
No,
that.
no, no. This is a term I like. How about like-minded diversity? Right? So
Yeah. Like-minded diversity. It's like jumbo shrimp. Like-minded diversity.
yeah. I mean, I'm not anti-diversity. I'm just not buying into the idea that this
No.
is some towering virtue
Right.
that trumps everything.
Yeah. So yeah, the idea that we're anti-diversity. You're married to a Mexican woman.
Yeah.
I'm married to an Asian woman. So
Right.
we're really anti-diversity.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, come on. But this idea that diversity is somehow inherently a good thing, that it trumps everything else. It's a value. It just doesn't make sense.
So all right. So our brew club
Yeah.
was going to, just a bunch of people meeting and brewing. Then they wanted to organize as a 503c nonprofit.
Okay, right.
And by doing that, you have to qualify for a bunch of things, right? You have to have
To
minutes.
prove that you recycle, right?
I don't even know, but you have to have a mission statement,
Right.
And you have to have a board of directors, and you have to meet, and you have to pay dues, right? Whatever the qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
So at any rate, in this mission statement, there's this patent. You have to say that you're committed to diversity. Right?
Okay.
So
is
there
there a
was
government requirement
So
or
there's
what?
no. It's a liberal requirement.
Okay. All right.
You have to include that in there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so what you're saying is you're going to hold public brewing in black neighborhoods and Hispanic neighborhoods in order to encourage people? I mean, you're going to have an outreach program?
Okay.
Well, no. There's nothing about that. Nobody's
No.
making any effort to do that. So I'm like, so all you're saying is we don't discriminate. Yay for us! Right? That's all you're saying.
Was anybody trying to discriminate before?
Never.
No.
So I mean, why? So the argument was, why even include that unless
No.
you're going to have it as part of your stated goal? We're going to,
It's all about patting
That's
yourself
all
on
it
the back.
is.
It's
And I'm
all
like,
about saying, aren't I virtuous?
no, the door is open. Anybody?
course.
Guess what? Right now, I think almost all brew clubs are white, middle class, middle-aged men.
Generally speaking, men.
Okay,
I mean, there are
and
a
that's
few
it.
women, but...
In ours, it's all of those things with a couple of women, like a couple of girlfriends, and a couple of lesbians.
Right.
And
Okay. And did anybody turn them away? Did anybody say you're not welcome?
And gotcha, we have had a couple of black guys come through there.
Right.
The fawning was sickening.
Yeah. Would you please?
Yes.
Please join
I think
us?
I think we drove them off.
Right.
By
being too welcoming.
Because we want to show everybody we're the club that has black people.
We're the diverse club.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Look,
Right.
if you want to brew beer, come in.
Right.
Don't make a big deal out of this.
Right. I know. That's what makes it the worst.
So like I was saying, so my personal story, right? Like you said, so I'm young pigweed. I'm like, actually, before diversity was a thing, I was like, I would like to know what another culture is like.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to learn another language.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, Mexico's right next door.
Right.
That's about as far as it was like, well, it's the closest place I can get to.
Yeah.
And Spanish seems like the most useful language.
Sure. Yeah.
Went down there, learned Spanish, met Mrs. Pigweed, and it's been great. I mean, loved it. It's been a very enriching part of my life.
Right.
But this is why I'm not a progressive. A progressive would say it's an enriching part of my life, and it better be yours too.
That's right. Doggone it. If you haven't done this, then you're a bad person.
Yeah, for me, I was like, well, it works for me. Might not work for anybody else. I don't get any points for this. I'm just doing it on my own. Seems to work out for me.
Yeah.
Might not work out for you. I don't know. So.
I don't know. It seems like there are too many people who want to run everybody else's lives.
Yes.
Yes. And, we're just like saying, do your own thing, and let's not worry about that stuff anymore.
Right. So I would say diversity is neither here nor there, and it's got its upside, and probably in places it's got a downside.
There are places when it's good, and there are places where it's just like stupid.
But mostly it's a lot of virtue signaling
Yes.
by white people who only hang out with white people, but want to sound like they want to make sure everybody knows that they're not a racist.
Right. Yeah. So they say they're into diversity, and that somehow makes them better.
You just have to say it.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay.
All right.
That's about all we gotta say.
That's all we gotta say.
Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.